Well, thanks very much, Dave, for having me and everyone else. I'm here today to talk to you about ethics in a world of ever-growing AI. So feel free to type in the chat, or if you don't have the raise hand, because I don't have it, if you've definitely got a burning question or you want to make a comment, feel free definitely to come off mute and ask it, because I like this. Rather than me talking at you, I'd much rather this be much more interactive and have a bit of discussion, because I don't think there is any right answers here, and the more discussion there is, the better. So to start with, I usually like to do a bit of a quote. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. So Charles Dickens' opening line to A Tale of Two Cities, which is set in the lead up to the French Revolution, I feel as relevant then as it is right now as we move into this information age. We as technologists can use our skills to make amazing impacts on people's lives, or we have the power to destroy them. So today I'm here speaking to you as a simple developer. I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a data scientist, I'm not an AI expert, but I do know that we need to think things through, and we need to have a voice to help others to consider what the implications of those bits that we flip every day have on other people's lives. Our curiosity to try something and see if we can is one of our most valuable assets, and also our weakest link. Now more than ever, that the apps that we build for fun can be used for harm, and what we think is innocuous can now have much more devastating effects in the future. So when I put this presentation together, I faced my own ethical dilemmas and as to what exactly we should talk about, and there's a few uncomfortable things that you'd like to consider. But I thought that the subjects, we just actually have to have a discussion, and my aim is to inform and educate and not to upset. So today, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to go through what some of the different types of ethics are. Differences of what technology that we're going to talk about how seeing and hearing may not be believing anymore. We're going to look at some of the different facial recognition and tracking systems out there. Of course, we can't, have a talk about AI and ethics without talking about robots. And then I'm going to take you through a few different things that I've been looking at that you can add to your team to sort of start thinking about ethics as a team. So we're going to start with a mentee meter. So if you haven't used mentee before, there's a link there that I'll just get Dave to chuck in the chat for us. And what I want us to do is to put in one word that comes to your mind when someone says ethics. And what that's going to do is it's going to start popping up on this screen here and build a little Wordle. So give you a couple of more seconds to put in your word when you think about ethics. And as you can see, they're starting to pop up there. Cool. So we've got fair, corruption, morality, and being thoughtful. I think that's a really good start for a set of words. So we're going to go talk about some ethical dilemmas. Now, I think that one of the easiest ways to start to describe the slippery slope that we get into when we start to talk about ethics and what's right and wrong is to do a bit of an example. So what I'm going to do, normally I would do this in person with some real dice and I would bring someone out of the audience. We're going to do this virtually. So this is based on it was an exercise done overseas. So the idea of this game is that I'm going to roll a dice, and before we start, you're going to like say if you're going to pick high or low. So a die has numbers 1 to 6, and if you say high, you're thinking it's either going to be 4, 5, or 6. If you say low, you're thinking it's going to be 1, 2, or 3. And the idea of this game is if you're correct, you would get the dollar value of that number on the die. And if you're wrong, you get nothing. So for instance, if you said high and I rolled a 6 and you were correct, you would get $6. So maybe we can just use the chat to see everyone what they're going to bet on. So before I roll the die, are you going to bet high or low? Okay, we've got a few answers. So I'm going to roll the virtual dice. This one came out at roll 1. So anyone that got it correct, you get $4. Everyone else gets nothing. So yeah, boo. Yeah, Dave dips out. So if we did that a second time and you want to bet again, so a lot of people are switching their bets. Yeah, cool. So then we roll it again. This time it's a 5. So whoever went for high, again, gets $5. So everyone gets the concept of this game. Yeah, poor Dave, he's come up with 0. So what we do now is instead of you telling me in advance what you're betting on, you're going to keep it to yourself, and then at the end tell me if you were correct. So you don't have to type it in here. So if I roll it, so if you're thinking now high or low, keep it to yourself. I'm going to roll the die. And it comes up. So how many people pick low? Yay, Dave got it this time. Yep. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to do it one more time. High or low, keeping it to yourself. This one comes up high. Now, what they did next in the experiment, which I don't do in person either, is what they did was they hooked people up to a lie detector test. And they ran this to see how truthful people were when they didn't have to reveal in advance the money they were handing over. So what they found is that people that tended to be luckier more just slightly than half the time, but the variance occurred when the difference was bigger. So if it was a 6 versus a 1, people were more likely to lie, which is quite interesting. So what we do here then is we add another clause to the rules, which is that you don't get to keep the money. That if you win, the money goes towards your favorite charity. Now, how many people think that people would be more likely to lie if the money was going to someone else? Who thinks they'd be less likely to lie if the money was going to someone else? And who thinks it would be just about the same? Depends on who it is. On who the charity is? Yeah, so if it's your favorite charity. So what they found was people were more likely to lie if it was going to someone else, because they justified it as there's no harm and it's going to a good cause. And then when I thought about this, I thought about in real life. So has anyone had friends who've ever asked them to like their favorite photo on Facebook to win a competition, or to vote for them on a site for their baby pictures? No one's ever like liked their friends' photos to help them win a competition or vote for them in a competition. Yeah, cool. Yeah, you avoid those, David. Yeah. So it's really similar because you're like influencing a vote, not necessarily because you think they're better, but just to help them over the line. Cool. So what we're going to talk about today is there's many different types of ethics, and I'm going to describe 3 different ones to you today. And they're all based off, if anyone's seen The Good Place, it's an interesting comedy show. It's all wound up now, but it's a show that sort of delves for Immanuel Kant. It's real basic ethics. So it's don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat. There's definitely that division between right and wrong. And it's one of those ones that you could feel that it would be easy to write a program to say this is right and this is wrong. So the dilemma we're going to face today is that we work in a nuclear power plant, and that nuclear power plant, something's gone wrong and something bad's going to happen and it's going to kill a lot of people. The dilemma is that you have the ability to log in, but you shouldn't be allowed to, and save everyone. Who thinks, so there's no judgment here, there's no right or wrong answer, who thinks they would hack it and who thinks they would let the nuclear power plant blow up? So if you were a deontologist, you would not hack it because you would justify it in saying that you're not allowed to hack, so you shouldn't be allowed to do this. Can you assume you don't know what you're doing? Yeah, that's the other problem. You could make it worse. Instead of killing 50 people, you could kill 50,000 people. Good point, Alan. So that's deontology. The next one is consequentialism. So the idea of this one is that the action that you take brings about more benefit than harm, and it brings the most benefit to a greater number of people. So a lot of people will, when they talk about this type of ethics, it's the idea of that the ends justify the means. Don't hack short the nuclear company stock. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's ever come across the trolley problem. So this is the trolley problem. We don't really have trolleys in Australia. I guess we have some, and you happen to be walking past and notice that there's 5 people that you don't know tied down to the track. And if you let that trolley go, it's going to run over those 5 people. Now, you happen to be beside a lever that can turn the trolley down a different track. And if you press that lever, it's instead of running over 5 people, it's going to run over 1 person. How many people would pull the lever? You'd run away. Yep, you'd pull it. And then how many people, if we change it slightly, if those 5 people were friends of yours and the single person on the other track was a complete stranger, how many people would pull the lever then? We could probably find different scenarios where everyone would switch from one side the other, or maybe we'd all just run away. Are they Facebook friends or real ones? What if they were like your family, Alan? So the type of ethics we're talking about here is generally you would pull the lever and run over the one person to save 5. Bye family. Yeah, okay. So then the third one is virtue ethics. So this was made famous by Aristotle and the ancient Greeks. So it's the idea of courage, loyalty, and wisdom. And it's about treating your character as your lifelong project. We are what we repeatedly do. So this comes down to who you want to be. I use Batman and the Joker as an example. So Batman is what people would call the goodie. The Joker is the baddie. Now, he tends to run around, cause all sorts of chaos. He causes people to die, causes people to get hurt, but Batman never kills the Joker, if you've ever read the comics. And sorry to spoil it if you haven't. So why does Batman never kill the Joker? So if we look back at the ethics that we've been discussing, if he was a deontologist, you would not kill the Joker because it's wrong to kill. And then if you look at the next lot of ethics, he would kill the Joker because killing him would be better than letting lots of people die. But when it comes to Batman, you look at virtue ethics, and it comes down to what sort of superhero does Batman want to be? And he doesn't want to be the sort of superhero that kills his enemies. And that's why he'll prevent the Joker from doing things, but not kill him. Does that make sense? Yep, cool. So before we move to the next one, is anyone want to ask questions or have a comment on the different types of ethics that we've just sort of had a quick overview on? No questions?
Feel free if you did want to comment and unmute.
Yep.
That's okay too. I have muted people just by default, but.
Okay, I'll take that as everyone's good to move on. So we're going to do mentee again. So same URL, and I'll just quickly move the slide across. So this time, when we think about artificial intelligence, when you hear that word, what comes to mind? Androids, robot overlords, Westworld. Machine learning. Pattern recognition, automation, machine learning. Cool. Awesome. I'll just leave that running, and if you've got more, they'll start to pop up in that screen in a minute. So a lot of these problems that we're going to talk about aren't necessarily artificial intelligence problems. I'll say that straight up. A lot of them are just general tech problems, but it's just amplified when you start to add artificial intelligence to it. So we're going to start with. So this is so all of these ones I have first-hand knowledge of. So if anyone's ever played Forza Horizons, they have a concept there of drivatars. So the idea there is it takes some of the patterns of your friends that are that play the same game, and when you're playing online, even if they're not online, it feels as if you're playing with your friends. So for me, one day I was at home, I wasn't having a good day. My boyfriend was out, his name's John, and I'm not having such a great day on Forza. He kept running into me. He kept cutting me off, And every time I was pipped at the line and came second, it was him. And it kind of went on for hours, and I was getting really, really frustrated. So eventually, he comes home, and I'm pretty wound up at this point. And I'm just like, oh, he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, you are so frustrating. You have been knocking me out and cutting me off all day. And I was just so angry at him. And he looks at me and he's like, but you know, it wasn't me, right? And I'm like, yes, but I'm still angry at you for it. So I assumed that when they did this feature, they wanted to make it fun so you can play with your friends and have that association. I don't think the intention there was for any of the bad emotions that you feel when you're losing a game to then rub off onto the person that wasn't actually there. Has anyone ever had that when they're playing a game? They get angry at someone who isn't actually playing the game? No? Maybe it's just me. The second one that I've seen is Strava. So if anyone's got like a Garmin Fitness or a Fitbit, a lot of these apps, the idea is like they've gamified doing exercise and stuff like that. So when I first started using Strava, I used it because I was learning how to ride. And when I started, I was really bad and everyone was passing me. So what was really good about Strava for me was that I was comparing me to me. I could see me getting better. I could see I was getting faster. I could ride longer. I could go up the hill that I couldn't go up before. But what happened for different types of personalities that may be prone to addiction or competition was they were putting themselves in harm's way to get some of these awards and achievements. So they would go and do risky things, and a lot of there was quite a few instances of people having heart attacks or might having an accident trying to get this concept of king of the mountain or get their badge. And the other one that was quite prevalent as well was it was unintentionally revealing a few secret air bases where people had recorded runs and rides and where stuff shouldn't have been. So I think when they made these achievements, they wanted people to use their app, get out, do a bit of exercise. But I really don't think that anyone would have ever wanted someone to go out to the point that they harmed themselves. And I know that they have made a few changes to some of the leaderboards and stuff like that in the functionality to make it to sort of silence some of that noise so that you're not quite as addicted to trying to get some of these things. This one I haven't got any actual experience with, but I thought this was a really interesting case of thinking outside the box. So I really like, there's a YouTube channel called 2 Minute Papers, which explains a lot of the AI concepts in like a 2-ish minute video. And this was one of them. So the idea here is they're trying to get the little, what he looks like is kind of like a spider, but he's got 6 legs. So he's got to try and walk around and so that the leg touches the ground less than 10% of the time. So he's going to learn how to walk in a more efficient way. So I'll just play that video for you. So off he goes. He looks like a little insect walking along. His second attempt, he tries a different gait. So he sort of does this weird walking thing. Then the third one, he thinks outside the box, flips onto his back and uses his shoulders. So technically his legs aren't touching the ground anymore. And I thought that was quite cute. I thought that is interesting that playing outside the rules, he was afraid to do that. So the takeaway here, I guess, is to think about different ways that people could be affected by your application. And there's not necessarily, you can't ever actually think about all of them, but then there's also sort of acknowledging them and coming up with ways to sort of fix those problems as they arise. Anyone got any examples of where technology did things that they weren't expecting? Nope. Okay. So the next one I'm going to talk about is the concept of seeing is not believing. So the concept of, can you believe your eyes anymore? So this is where we start to talk about image translation and also a bit about voice. So this first example here, the image on the left is the original photo taken on a sunny day, and the image on the right is where AI has been applied to it and turned it into a rainy day, which is pretty cool. Like, that's pretty impressive to be able to do that, because to me it looks quite this one here is different examples of the same concept. So you can take an image and do lots of different things to it. So you can turn night to day, you can turn the outline image into a photo of a bag, you can turn black and white into color, you can turn some lines and boxes into a facade of a building, which is pretty impressive on single images. But what I'm going to show you now is a video. So the one on the left is the original image and the one on the right is the altered one. Now, for me, if you sent me the right-hand side video, I would completely believe that that was your dash cam video. So I don't know how many people have a dash cam, but we use it. We have one in our car. So what I can picture straight away happening is that, you know, you're driving along and you have a little bit of a prang because you haven't like been paying attention. Are people going to be not believing the dash cam videos that are submitted to like insurers and police and stuff, evidence? So I want to move on to the second topic, which is image sort of swaps. So I don't know how many people played Doom back in the day, but when I was a kid, we loved Doom. And what we did was we thought we were pretty good. My brother, he had all the artistic talent. We had some scans of some family photos, and back in those days, you could edit the level. So what he did was he took some pictures of my family and we submitted them into the game. So Dad became the pot plant and I was one of the beasts, and my mum was this beast that came out and shot fire. We thought we were pretty clever. We loved it. We were having great fun shooting up the family. We showed my mum, and she got really, really upset at us really quickly, and she was like, "Turn that off, get rid of it. I never want to see it again." We just were really astounded. We're like really upset. We could make her the pot plant instead. Not sure what her problem is there. And it took me a really, really, really long time before I understood why she got so upset at us. We fast forward a little bit in time. I don't know if anyone's ever seen these around the office, but there was a period where people were sending these Christmas cards around. So the idea there was you'd take photos of people in the office and you'd cut their heads out and they would become an elf. Quickly after that, there was a lot of complaints. It'd be, why was I the fat elf? Why am I the short elf? Why am I the elf with the funny leg? Again, people would say, oh, it's just a bit of fun. I don't know what your problem is. Don't quite get the issue here. And it took me a really long time to sort of work out what the concept here was. Now, the problem here was consent, is really what it boiled down to. We took that photo of my mum, which she had, you know, willingly posed for as part of the family album, and we had used it in a way that she had not agreed to. And at the time, you know, it was me, my family, and maybe a couple of friends that had seen it. So, you know, maybe 10 people were affected by the fact that she, you know, didn't really like it. Fast forward to the office. Again, they may have posed for an office photo to be used on the website, but they hadn't given their consent to be the funny looking elf that's sent around in a meme at work. Here, yeah, depending on the size of your office, it might be a couple of hundred people that are exposed to it. Now, if we fast forward today, where we have like the internet, the number of people that can see this stuff is exponential, and it's really, really hard to get rid of. And this is a really good example of that. So does anyone know who this lady is? No one? So this lady is Noelle Martin, and she was the Perth Western she was the Western Australian Young Achiever for the Year. She won that award, sadly, for her advocation of face swapping rules. And if you watch this, so I've got a YouTube video at the bottom there that you don't want to watch it work, but it is her TED talk on how people took her image and face swapped it on Facebook and sort of really ruined her reputation. So she was the main person that got a bunch of the rules changed in Queensland, New South Wales, Western Australia, and then later the whole of Australia to make that a crime. And if you have any doubts as to the horrible effects that it can have to someone's life for doing this sort of thing, she covers that in her video. It's quite confronting. So that's all the bad things you can do with face swapping. Now these things get a bit of a bad rap sometimes, but there's definitely stuff that you can do that's good. So if we look at this site here, it's called thispersondoesnotexist.com. Now, every face that it generates every time you hit refresh is not a real person. So there's a bit of conflict around this one as well, but I think it's kind of an interesting concept that if you're doing a marketing campaign or you want a range of photos, that you could get a completely unique person. Because if you've ever gone to buy stock imagery and you want someone with a certain look, you'll end up with finding it on someone else's website as well. Now, the problem with these is that this first screen I'm going to show you that you can see here, this is V1. V2, I'll show you a few more slides over. You can start to pick the images. Like, I think it's pretty good. Like, if you had not told me, I would have thought they were real people. But if you look at the women in the photos, you'll see that their earrings don't match a lot of the time. So either the left and the right will be a different earring or the earring will be missing. Now, we might do that every now and again, but it's not a common thing to wear mismatched earrings. The other one, if you look at the picture on the top middle shirt, and then if you look at his shirt, he's it's sort of blended into the background. So it's sort of taken something that was two people's photos and it's kind of got the background messed up. And the lady on the bottom middle, her background looks a bit funny as well. So the texture changes quite a bit. So that was V1. So then they did an update on V2 and it took me a lot longer to actually get the same errors come up. So you'll see here, the lady on the left, her earrings are mismatched. But then I didn't find as many of the hair smudges that I found in the V1. And then on the lady on the right, the background's a bit funny. Again, it looks like it's taken someone's face and turned it into the background because it's like a partial. So we can still sort of pick these things up when we look at them, but these GANs are getting a lot smarter. So the next thing that people do is they start to make a fake detector. So this is a video here which sort of shows where you can sort of pick it up. So what they start to do is segment out parts of the face and the neck. And for me, when I look at videos that look fake, for me, it tends to be the area around the neck that usually start to give it away, like the movement is a little bit wrong. And then the problem with these is the better the detectors get, so do the generators. So you're in a slightly bit of a problem with what comes first. So a bunch of the big companies late last year got together and they wanted to make a deep fake detection challenge. So you can actually I think you can still download the data set. So they put out a data set you could try and write a deep fake detector for. You could submit that and they ran it across their held back real set. And it was actually, if you go to the website and have a look, it's actually really interesting to see the people that did really, really well against the test set didn't necessarily do so well against the held back access, and it's actually quite a difficult problem. But it's good to see, I think, that a lot of the bigger companies are starting to recognize that as well. The other thing that these GANs can be used for is generating data to then feed into AI where you don't have enough sample sets. So I think this one here is a really good example. So this one here is they're trying to write an AI to detect different tumors, and they didn't have enough data. So the problem, if you've ever done medical stuff, is getting permission to use imagery and getting correctly labeled data sets. So if you can't get enough, what you can do is use one of these GANs to generate more data for you to spread across your test sets. So it can't generate stuff that it hasn't seen before, but it can do enough combinations to give you a base set. So here, the top set of the originals. So what they'll do is they'll take it and they might mirror it. So in the instance of a brain, it'll go from like the left side to the right side of the brain, or they might enlarge or shrink the tumor. So for cases for things like cancer or something like dementia, it can really help them beef up the data sets to then use for future AI generation. I think that's like one of the best ways I can see that we can use this sort of deep fake sort of creation of data. Yes, yes, GAN is generative adversarial network. Thank you for that. Anyone got any questions or thoughts on generating fake data or fake images? No? You're all really quiet. So if we take the next step and we look at voice, this is the next one that I think is quite interesting. So this was a little while ago, so you may have seen this before. So I just want to make sure that when I play this, I need to share this again, I think. Hang on 1 second, sorry. Just remembered I forgot to hit the include audio. Oops. There we go. So I'll show you this one. Some of you may have seen it before.
Let's say you want to ask Google to make you a haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So when I first saw this, I thought, oh, that's really cool. I can get my computer to book my haircut. And then the second thing I Terminator. So, well, they get Terminator and he pretends to be John Connor's stepmom because she sounds like it. And they trick her by like asking her about the dog and call the dog the wrong name. So I can quickly see how this can be good, but also how people could use this to do really bad stuff, like, you know, ring up my mum and tell her that I'm in trouble and I need some money, and that she would transfer it over straight away. Yeah, I wonder if this, yeah, so then the other thing, yes, the same thing. I wonder if the hairdresser got sick of all the phone calls when they were testing it. I also thought then eventually we just have two AIs ringing around each other and no one ever speaking to each other. So the voice stuff, while it's also scary, the other thing that I think could be really good for this is where they use it to capture people's voices that have disease. So if you've got ALS or any of those type of things where you eventually will lose the ability to speak, they can use it to synthesize your own voice so that you can still sound like you. It does have some good uses, but the first ones that always come to mind are the bad ones. How much time have I got?
About 15 minutes.
Cool. So I might skip ahead. Oh no, I'll do this one.
No, yeah,
So,
maybe a little bit longer, but
yeah. Okay. So the next one I wanted to talk about was this sort of the facial recognition stuff. If you've ever seen the show Pursuit of Interest, they have like the supercomputer that goes out and grabs all the different information and can track you by using cameras and all sorts of tech. Seems a bit far-fetched. So this is one I faced myself. So back in the Kinect Xbox days, I did a bit of a prototype for a store to do people counting instead of using the laser scanner. And quickly I discovered that because of the data it could get, I knew that people came in the store, I knew where they kind of were, I knew that they were hanging outside, but I could also tell how tall they were. I also had a camera feed, so it'd be a lot easier these days, but I could probably start to do some facial recognition. I could probably look at the bags that they were carrying and work out what of the stores they'd been in before they came into mine. And in the end, for this one, I decided that it just felt wrong, and that was before there was any laws about any of this stuff. So I sort of went, here's what I've done, but I don't really feel right about doing this other than to like count the people. And it's been in the news a lot recently. So I even found an article back from a couple of years ago. So South Australia Police using facial recognition to catch criminals. And then more recently, places like San Francisco and other places in the US have started banning the use of facial recognition for the police. And then China, there was a lot of news sort of late last year about China using it as a social credit score. So they could use it to reward and punish people. So if they decided you'd done something bad using facial recognition, they could deny, your bus ticket from being able to use or stop you traveling and stuff like that. And it's sort of definitely like the momentum sort of recognizing that facial recognition has a lot of bias and can give incorrect results is definitely sort of come full flow because it lasts like a month or so, definitely. So like IBM, they're no longer going to develop anything to do with facial recognition. Amazon and Microsoft won't be selling any of that sort of technology and to the police to be able to do this at all anymore either. And I've got a good book reference for you at the end if you're interested in sort of this idea of gathering your data and using it to manipulate populations and using it as a currency. And then we can't do AI without robots. Now, I think robots get a bad rap. Robots can do really good stuff for us. So robots can go into places that are dangerous. Like they can go into places with poisonous gases. They can go into dangerous places we can't fit into. They can do lots of repetitive tasks that people would hurt themselves doing. This is a test in Japan. They set up a robot concierge. It didn't go very well because turns out that generally people want to stay in a hotel because they want to be able to ask the concierge for help and actually get like an in-person response. So the other thing that robots can be really good for. So this movie is called Robot and Frank, and the idea here is that Frank he has Alzheimer's and he is difficult to deal with, and his family are having trouble. So he has to take his medication. He has to do some brain activities to like keep him active. So they get the robot in. The robot makes sure he takes his meds. It can take any of the abuse that Frank hands out, but they sort of become friends. But he keeps him company and he helps him like plan all sorts of things. I think this is really interesting because a lot of our population that live alone are elderly, and all the research points that the longer that someone can stay in their home, their own home, the better it is for them. So the idea of having like companion robots to be able to help them take their meds, to be able to go around their house, and just to help with the loneliness as well, like I think is definitely where robots can be really useful as we go into sort of this aging population. But very few could afford it. Very true. Very, very true. So that's all the bad stuff that I can think of. Well, there's lots of others, but there's a different like things to think about. But what can you do about it? That's where I wanted to get to. So I think the easiest thing is for everyone to start thinking about it and discussing it. And I came across when I was at a VR conference last year, Microsoft did a presentation, and part of it they discussed this game that they'd come up with as a group called Judgment Call. So they sort of put this into their sort of sprint planning. So the idea with this one is that they have a set of ethical principles in the cards. So and then you can grab one of those cards. You have a list of user types. So you write down your different types of users, and they have a rating system. And then the idea is you pull these cards out, and then what you do is you write a review to that fairness principle from that person's perspective. And it makes you think about what you would have to do to your system to give it that rating. So the example there, I think, which is a good one, is the reliability one from a hacker. 5-star, what would a hacker what would they say? So they're saying that the ticketing system is so easy to hack if you know what you're doing, and there are tons of ways to hide from infrared sensors, and you can walk past any of them and get back in. And they got into 6 concerts for free that year. So if you start thinking from that person's point of view, then you can start to think about what you need to do to your system to improve it so that it'd make it really hard for a hacker to give you a 5-star rating. And then if you're a concert goer, what things would happen to your system for them to give you a 5-star rating on privacy? Like that you want it to be digital, you want it to be fast, that it is secure, and that you can you have the choice to delete your biometrics. So it's a different way to start thinking as a team about what other features you need to consider from different points of view that I think maybe not everyone else already does this, but I notice a lot of teams like they'll skip over this whole concept and sort of concentrate on features that don't think about like accountability and inclusion and accessibility and fairness and stuff like that. So you can actually download that as a PDF as well if you wanted to like play the game yourself and make your own deck. I want to finish with a call to action. So really when you're thinking about ethics and you think about it in your everyday technology life, it doesn't have to just be AI. So to think twice about what you're doing, is it the right thing to be doing? And who does it affect? And then to talk that through. So it might be with your colleagues or it might be with a friend. And then to have a voice. So if you think it's bad, like say so. And if you're not in a position where you can like help others have a voice. So if someone, calls something out, to back them up if you can, so that the more different opinions we have on this, the more likely are to sort of think about things in a different way. And then here's a couple of books that I really highly recommend. So the first one, Made by Humans, X-rays that were done in Australia, and it talks about the bias that was built into the tagging, which made it, not good to use. There's one on how to do good data, ethical algorithms, and the one on the far right is it's a really it's a heavy book. It's a big fat hardcover, and it's quite heavy, but it talks about using all this information about ourselves that are being captured, and it's pretty harsh on Google and Facebook, to be honest, in this book. talking about using that data as a digital currency and the ability for them to, start to use that to affect how people operate and get them to do things by knowing things about them that you may not necessarily even have gleaned about yourself yet. And that's everything I have. So anyone got any questions or comments? You've been really quiet.
I noticed Ben's posted a couple of links and a book reference there.
Some Cyro ones.
Ben, did you have any? You seem like you've had some involvement in this area. Have you got any comments you wanted to make? Feel free to unmute.
Oh no, just enjoyed the talk. Thanks. It was just I just recalled the Data 61 Sarah document that relates to the AI ethics framework. Just to put it out there.
Yeah, that's a good one as well.
And just that Singer book, something that just started getting into, but I think it's really good from the point of view of just easily digestible ethical questions and approaches. That was it, really.
Yeah. So I think it's David, not Ben. Looking at your email address.
That's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Now, anyone else, feel free to unmute if you'd like and make a comment or a question, or post in the chat room. There's a question from Mark there. What other methods could be used for organisation accountability of ethics? He liked the card sprint planning one.
How to formalize it. Yeah, I guess a lot of that comes down to they're making it a principle, that it's important to the organization, and that how many people have either done ethics training in respect to building a system, as opposed to I know I've done a lot of ethics training, mandatory courses at client sites, but a lot of them tend to be about bribery and stuff like that, as opposed to, is what we're building the right thing to build? I think a lot of it is sort of bubbling that up and making it a conversation and making it a core principle of the company that you want to be an ethical company.
I guess the other interesting question is, should we hold machines to a higher standard than ourselves from an ethics point of view? If we're pretty crap at making ethical decisions, a lot of the time, what makes us think that we can, I guess to the core of what you were saying, or the core of the problem, really, which is how do you actually code that, basically? Do you choose a deontological ethics? Do you choose a consequence?
Yeah, it's really tough, right? And then when you start to look at that, there's different types of ethics, and then when you look at it on a global scale, different countries think that different things are okay. So how do you get all those different cultural nuances into it as well?
It also makes me think a bit about, normally you would think, if some software misbehaved, then you would blame the developers who created it. But I guess with AI, it starts to become there's more of a gap between the original humans that were involved in the development and the way that software is actually being used.
It's a really interesting problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of being able to it not just being a black box, so you can it be explainable, but then you have to get back to that source set that it was trained on, right? So if it had underlying bias in it, being able to fix that or identify it, and then quickly being able to shut it down. We've seen a lot of the chat bots or whatever that suddenly start attacking people. You've got to be able to switch that stuff off, right? Before it does lots of bad stuff. Animal liberation. I haven't seen that one.
Sorry, Bronwen, I think I just missed a heap of what you said. I got cut off. Yeah.
Oh.
The audio's been a little bit choppy today. I'm not sure what's going on with Teams, but or it might just be me. Any other questions? Otherwise we'll sort of wrap it up. Anyway, well, thank you, Bronwen. I appreciate you giving up your time to join us today. And I know Bronwen has sort of mentioned her Twitter address there, and feel free to get in touch with her if you'd like to follow the conversation on later on.
Yeah, if anyone wants to chat more, definitely interested, because I'd like to hear anyone's ideas on how to get their team thinking more about ethics and how they build that into their systems, because it's, I think, coming up with a way to sort of combat it and think about it and get it moving forward is one of the harder things at the moment. Like, we can talk about the problems, but having a way to sort of come up with a solution is definitely there's a lot of work to be done there.
No, it's a really important thing to be thinking about. So yeah, feel free to join me in giving Bronwen a round of applause virtually, and thank you everyone for coming along. And I've just, whilst we've been meeting, I had an email back from Robert in the US saying yes, he's good for August. So the talk making the web faster will be our topic for August. So keep an eye out for information about that. And with that, I'll say thanks everyone for coming along, and we'll catch you next time.